my friends, with our favorite realtors right across Canada, or at least the one side of Canada. We got Tisha McKenna from Calgary. How are you doing, Tisha?
Doing great, thanks.
Excellent.
Enjoy the cool weather.
Yeah, good stuff. And Roland Kym, all the way from the absolute West Coast. How you doing, my man?
Doing great, buddy.
Awesome. So we're going to do a couple of things today. We're always going to do a little heartbeat, a check-in to see how our local markets are doing. Of course, I'm here in the Toronto area. And one thing we thought we would talk about as we're into that spring market in many cases, and every spring, it's our real estate cycle, whether we like it or not, it always heats up, sometimes ever so slightly or a lot. And in some cases, in certain areas where I know where Roland is and Tisha is, we're starting to see multiple offers. We're going to have a conversation around what's happening locally, even across Canada, and as well as some negotiation practices and some of the new laws that are coming in and creating some curveballs, if you will. So let's check in. I'd love to go to Calgary first, Tisha. Give us that heartbeat of the market. What's happening there? What are you seeing?
Well, we're definitely well into our spring market. We've gotten a lot more listings coming on, but quickly being absorbed. Our days on market is shrinking, and we're seeing appreciation continue. So definitely hitting that strong spring market here in Calgary.
Excellent. Provide some clarity on that too for us. The appreciation, you're seeing appreciation. What does that look like? And I'm going to put you on the spot, whether it's year over year or just a little bump up from the previous month. Okay, she's going into her paperwork. I like it.
Yeah, I think the average price was up about 12% over last year.
Okay.
So, and days on market is shrinking about 20% from last year. So, biggest challenge is definitely in those properties under 500K. And then the higher price properties are a little more balanced, but I would say still a seller's market.
Yeah. And the challenge being under that 500K as an example, that's our entry level. That's where those
Exactly.
properties are. So you got
Yeah.
competition. Yeah.
That's where people are qualifying, and so everybody wants to be in at that price point, and there's very little available.
Gotcha.
So, yeah,
Good
driving those
stuff.
prices up.
Good stuff. Roland, what's our Vancouver market doing?
Yeah, pretty like spring steady. So for us, it's we're about 15% busier again year over year, still about 20% off the 10-year average. Days on market around 35. So kind of people always think it's faster in Vancouver, but there's certainly properties that take longer. And last 2 weeks, last 10 days, kind of feel like there's inventory. So we had a lot more listings after spring break, but we are also seeing the pressure points having a lot more multiple offers. And what a pressure point in Vancouver would be like an entry level home, detached home with a rental, which is like, low end is 1.8 plus. And a townhouse in Vancouver, which would be, 1.3 plus. Those are kind of the most competitive categories.
Interesting.
Can you hear me, buddy? Or
Yeah, I got you. I was just getting a little echo, so I wanted to make sure it was all good. And we are. And in Toronto here is somewhat similar to that Vancouver in this segment, but what we're seeing is our entry level, which is crazy as I say it out loud, but it's the truth, is anything pretty much under $1 million. We are seeing multiple offers on. You're in competition, especially anything outside of condos. That is, it's just starting to creep in on, say, your detached homes. I think in that next market segment, your 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom detached home, we'll probably feel that probably not till mid-April. A little bit of pressure there from the buyer's perspective. The interesting thing here is we have an early spring. Like literally, it's 16 degrees outside right now, and this is not normal for the Toronto area. And I got an email today, my friends. We went and looked at a property a week ago. Nice property around the corner from where I live. Beautiful with a walkout basement, 4-bedroom home, finished, beautiful backyard on the green space with a pool. I got a message today to say, if you want to come back, the pool has now been open. And that's like, we're halfway through March. We're still going to have some 0-degree days. I mark my words. So it's kind of crazy what people are doing to stand out from the crowd, that type of thing. But and we're just seeing it this week in the Toronto area. And I live in Stouffville, which is York Region, so just north of Toronto, a suburb of it. And if we have an average price of, call it 1.5 for a big 4-bedroom detached home, we're going to talk about this in just a few moments. The teaser price, meaning if it's valued at 1.5, the listing agents might decide to list it that at 1,399 or lower to gain traction. And we're just starting to see some multiple offers on that segment. So it takes a couple of weeks to kind of see where that's landing. I don't know. I haven't heard or seen, and maybe this is like you guys, where an offer's gone in, it's gone accepted, where it's so above and beyond the fair market value that it still, to me, is within fair market value range, we'll call it. And if 9 times out of 10 an appraisal needs to happen for the financing, it'll still appraise. Are you seeing that too, Tisha? When appraisals come in, we're still hitting that appraisal value? Because that's important to the closing, obviously.
Yeah, we're seeing them go over, but not so much that they're totally out to lunch with what the appraisals are coming in at. So, as much as there's competition and they're going well above, it's still within that range most of the time. It's still in the appraisal range as you suggested.
Yeah, yeah. Roland, same question. Are you still seeing that?
Yeah, so digging deeper into the teaser price concept here, yeah, I think you're right. Like we call it the kind of underpricing strategy, and what we're seeing as a result is it's motivating people off the bench to write an offer, but it's not pushing them past, into the crazy offers at all. So, for example, I was involved in a 6 offer situation last week, and they're all within kind of $30,000 for a 1.1 ish area townhouse. And so that tells me, and they were all subject free. So that tells me buyers today that are looking might be looking for more inventory, but when an underpriced property comes, they know likely it's going to sell for a fair price. So it motivates them to put in an offer. They're running their numbers and they're staying within their own categories, be it limitations on financing or what they perceive the true value to be from their perspective. And so when they write an offer, it's a strong offer. It's not unusual to see subject free. But what's different is when I go back to them with the seller's direction to see if anyone wants to change anything about the offer, many come back, like many say, thank you for, giving us a second opportunity. But it's not unusual to have them, might slightly adjust or even come back at exactly the same terms saying, we'd love to do the deal at this price, but we're not moving. And so that really tells me, we're still in a pretty tight category where the buyer is not being pushed by the seller. The buyer is aware that the market is busy and they need to be competitive. So they put a competitive offer forward, but they're a lot closer. And so because of that, absolutely no problem in getting it financed and appraised. I'm always surprised how close financing is to the offer price.
Yes. Yes. As he smirks and
Yeah.
laughs at it. Yeah. It is interesting. Now I think we've all experienced in times over, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, where there is a significant difference between what that accepted price is and what that appraisal is. And that's where, that's when markets kind of get out of hand and they go on that little runway for a while, but that's for another conversation. We're not there yet. So let's not have it in the sense, but we do need to be aware of it. So if you are offering on a property, keep it within fair market value, unless you have the cash to close on that property. That's the big if. Okay, so obviously we all live in different cities, which means in different provinces, more precisely for this comment. Which means we all have different real estate laws in which we have to abide by and guide our clients on, and we've in BC and in Ontario, our laws have changed. BC's a couple years ago with a lot of the ways we deal with offers, and in Ontario, our real estate law has been completely changed and updated There's a lot of the same, but also a lot of different things, like when it comes to multiple offers. And we chatted briefly about the teaser price. And to do a little history lesson from a few moments ago, that teaser price, if fair market value is $1 million, and I'm listing a home and I want to gain some extra eyeballs and showings, and more importantly, multiple offers, everything tells me that this home here, Tisha, is $1 million. Yet I have a long conversation with the buyer. We talk about our sales strategy, and I decide at anything under $1 million is a teaser price. Now, what we're seeing though is not 950, not 900. We're seeing some crazy numbers at in the 800s, maybe even 750, much below. I'd love to have a broad conversation about what that looks like in each of our markets, as well as let's talk about some of the individual laws that we got to follow. And there's some weird, they're weird because they're new. Some differences that maybe our viewers aren't aware of. So what's happening with the teaser price locally there in Calgary, Tisha?
We're not seeing a ton of them. We are seeing some. I think, sellers are always a little nervous that they will get that number that they want, and the guarantee is not always there that you're going to have those multiple offers. So it's definitely uh, seen once in a while, but not all that often in Calgary. Um, but they're there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Roland, the teaser price or that attraction price, however we want to call it, wherever we are locally, uh, are sellers and listing agents, is that the strategy at the moment for a lot of those properties, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely happens probably more here than at Calgary, but it's not as prevalent as it used to be. It's definitely, I'd say, maybe 40% of properties are, underpriced, or 30%, but not dramatically what you've explained. I would say most people, if it was worth $1 million, if you had asked three realtors at arm length and they all came back with a million, they might go to 899, or they might go, 949, but nothing as dramatic as what you've explained. Partially because the market, I don't think, recoils as dramatically as I was explaining earlier, because buyers are, really crunching their own numbers, and not because they have so clear limitations on their financing and affordability that they're not as quick to throw out big numbers. And so there is a risk of dramatically underpricing, where you involve people that shouldn't be involved, and you scare off, professional, or not professionally, but you scare off some good buyers that are like, I don't want to write with 8 offers, because they remember what 8 offers was 2.5 years ago, and it could potentially sell for a price that they're like, I would have paid that. So what we're typically seeing with the underpricing is it happens, or the really, really sharp pricing, when a buyer has already committed to a purchase. And so they want, what they're really looking for is for a great, good, fast sale where they can collect the dates that they need. So they
Yeah.
might underprice at $899 and then tell the consumer, ideal dates are, May 30th and June 1st. If you're negotiating, if they had gone to $1,050,000, they might get the same price, but the buyer might be less willing to give them, the June or the May 29th and June 2nd dates, or whatever they're looking for. And so it gives you a bit more strength, as we know, when there's other people interested. Keeping in mind that I have seen people underprice too low, and get offers, and then a week later they're on the market, above where the market value is, and they're switching their strategy. And so often a question that does come up with clients when we're talking about potentially underpricing is, what happens if we don't get the offers we want, right? And so the seller is always in the position that they need to accept an offer, and if they choose not to, their property still remains on the market. We cancel it and we relist, at market or slightly above, and are looking to negotiate. There's the perceived mindset that will, cause the market to think that, the seller, it creates a story in a lot of consumers' minds. But the reality is, a lot of consumers don't even look at the history of a property. And when it comes out as a new listing, they just see it in that light for the first time. And so certainly, it's not a problem if your first strategy doesn't work. But if you're too aggressive using underpricing, it can, lead to the results that you don't want. As well, we do have a big change that took place in the BC market January of this year, where when you're now what's called underpricing and holding off on offers, you used to say, Gary, we're listed on Monday. Next Tuesday, we're gonna look at offers at 4 o'clock, and we're gonna do showings between now and then. And so you would have to stay in contact with me on the off chance that someone on Saturday after open house sent me an amazing offer that's like a bully offer, even though they know we're waiting till Tuesday, but they're looking out for their buyer's best interest. And I'm obligated to share that to my seller. If it was great enough, my seller might say, hey, I want to consider this. And then I'd be rushing to contact everyone else that has seen it and saying, hey, my seller is actually considering an offer, and if you wanted to write, you'd have to jump in now. So that was always a bit disorganized and emotionally charged for lots of people who might have planned on, not seeing it on the weekend because they wanted to go out of Vancouver and they were going to see it on Monday, and then on Saturday they're told someone's writing an offer, and so it makes them feel like they were given false information and are being bamboozled. We've now changed that, where a seller, if they do choose to hold off on offers, they have to sign a document that gives clear direction to the marketplace that this seller is choosing to look at offers on a certain day at a certain time. And that cannot be changed. So we've regimented that if a seller is holding off on offers for a specific day, they can't, even if someone gave them, an offer $1 million more than what it's worth and it's subject free, they can't deviate from that path.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Locally here in Ontario, although many of our rules have changed, we'll get into some of them in just a bit here. From that perspective, Roland, we can still accept an offer at any time, regardless if we have an offer date or not. Now, we do have to obviously inform any agent that has shown the property that an offer has come in, obviously, or any party that's looked at the property. We always look at, so we use something called broker remarks, and maybe you do as well in your listings, where that additional information for the other realtors is important, and that's where we will supply the offer date and the wording that we use. We're trying to eliminate bully offers from our vocabulary, but it's still there. The correct term, I shouldn't say correct, the appropriate term is preemptive offers, and that's the terminology that we use. And we'll often see that the offer date is, Tuesday, March 23rd. I don't even know if that's real, but you get the idea. Seller is willing to look at preemptive offers. So that's the kind of the terminology
Yeah.
that we would look at. And I don't know about you guys, and it's a good habit anyways. If you're an agent out there, the first thing that I always look at, I'll scroll down to the broker remarks and see what additional information that we and our clients need to know. And 9 times out of 10 right now, we're seeing an offer date. And that's the big piece of it. Tisha, are you experiencing offer dates in the Calgary area, or are you experiencing more of this property's been on the market for 4 or 5 days, it's just gone through the weekend, and I'm going to submit an offer, and then 2 hours later, what do you know, a second offer's come in? Tell me
Right.
about what's going on there in Calgary.
Yeah. So it's a little mix. We do see an offer date on a lot of properties, but I do find, and we do allow the bully offer. So often, like you
Preemptively.
said, in our yeah preemptive offer in our agent comments, it'll kind of say, this is our presentation date, but we would look at preemptive offers, but not always a date. So I think sometimes we're nervous that, hey, we might not get the multiple offers. So often I'll see in the agent comments, hey, please leave offers open for 48 hours.
Yeah.
And then that will often lead to, okay, now we're presenting on tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then, we'll see how many come in at that point. So we don't typically, it's interesting to hear you say, Roland, that sometimes you'll have a week to show the property before you present. And here we tend to have shorter timelines. So there is a little more pressure for buyers to get in and see those properties before they sell. A lot of the time, you booked showings and they're already gone 2 days later. So I can see the appeal in potentially holding off for a longer period of time and actually letting everybody get through there to see these properties.
Well, and that's a good point, Tisha, too, is in some cases, it's kind of nice to see that offer date, because all of a sudden I don't have to drop everything that I'm doing at this moment to get my client into that property. Yet potentially we're going to be in competition in 4 or 5 days from now. So there's
Yeah.
that, balancing act as well. Roland, I obviously we talked briefly about both of our provinces changing the real estate laws or updating them perhaps. And one of the interesting things there in Vancouver and BC is who you get to represent, meaning
Mhm.
before, or why don't you take the lead on this and talk about representation of both buyers and sellers and at the same time and what you can and cannot do now.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we eliminated dual agency, and dual agency would be where I'm, the listing agent or the seller has hired me to sell the home. I have it listed, and then, my neighbor calls me or my client from down the road saying, "Hey, I'm interested in that house that you have listed. I might want to buy it." And so in your markets, you have a way of navigating that. In our markets now, that would be, we always have, you come up with a system. The system is that if I have a listing, my agency is always with the listing. And if a buyer puts up their hand on the same property, I would have to refer them to someone outside of my team and say, Tony, can you help my client Sarah on if they write on this home just for this transaction? If nothing happens, they'll come back to me and we'll look for a different property. And so you're separating the agency, and there's good and bad with that. I've, prior to that change, I've been a practicing realtor for 13-ish years. And, I haven't done a ton of dual agency, but I probably did like 30, 40 deals. And most of those were legitimate transactions where I was hired by the seller. I had no idea that the buyer, would be interested, and it was a buyer that's from my sphere, my database, that put up their hand. That somehow saw the listing come out. And in that case, what we could have done in the past was to talk to the seller, talk to the buyer, and said, "Hey, both of you are clients of mine. If you mutually agree to that, I can represent both of you. You don't share with me and I won't share, or even if you did, I won't share with the other side, your motivating factors and your top end price." And so as a result, you can still, you put together some really good transactions between, career long clients of yours in a positive way, and it had really great outcomes. The negative of that is when you represent the seller, you have the listing, and someone comes through as a member of the public, and certain agents, or the member of the public feel that that agent has more sway with the seller. And so that member of the public is asking to work with the listing agent, more out of fear of missing out versus out of alignment with the listing agent, that's their agent and they still want them to represent them. And so for a lot of years, it caused a lot of bad practices, I think, where certain agents were, seeing the commission opportunity versus the fact that, I only have relationship with the seller. I'll refer out the buyer and not represent them as well. So I like the change. Like, it certainly has impacted us a little bit where we've had to do some referring out. But in the same way as, like, we have the same rule with our buyers, right? In our buyer agency, it does say that the first, you may be interested in a property that another client is also interested in. We can show it to both of you, but the first person that says, "I want to write an offer," now gets our agency, and the other person would be referred out if they later decided that they wanted to write an offer as well. We will not pick like the one that we think is the best person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't have that here in Ontario. Tisha, I don't believe you have that as well in Alberta there. We can have dual agency or multiple representation as we refer to it in Ontario. Yeah, like you, Roland, my sphere, I had great clients, both buyers and sellers, and oftentimes we would write a transaction where both parties were a part of the same transaction. And and I can totally see it from the public's perspective and even from the legislative perspective. It's when a member of the public, someone that we haven't met beforehand, comes in. And sometimes the myth is, as Roland talked about, I want to go work directly with the listing agent because they have an inside track.
Mhm.
And it's kind of a myth out there, wouldn't you agree? As much as, as a listing agent, we like working with buyers that come to us. The bigger picture is, we will represent our client to the best of our abilities. And especially when we have that listing, well, they are our client first. And that's, as our real estate laws change, I think it's important for the three of us and who, to keep talking about it and to provide awareness. And one of the big things here in Ontario, as we circle back to the multiple offers, and this is where you guys can ask me questions as well, because this is so brand new, is in Ontario, our legislation now allows us to have something called open offers. And what that means here, my friends, is perhaps I'm the listing agent and both Roland and Tisha representing buyers, and they want to submit an offer on my property. They do so, and now we're in competition, just as we talked about. The seller now has the choice to basically share the contents of the offer with both parties.
Wow.
And it's kind of like it's kind of like talk about that auction. Well, it's not necessarily an auction, but you do get to learn what the contents are of the other offers. Now, what can be shared? I'm going to say it like this: everything except for what am I trying to say? Everything except for private information, like the name of the buyer. Outside of that, pretty much everything can be shared. And what is everything? Well, let's think about that. Obviously, the offer price, the deposit, the closing date, the contents, whether it's conditional, and what the conditions are, that type of thing. And that came into effect December 1st of 2023, so just 4-ish months ago. I might be
Oh,
wrong, but I have yet to hear of a situation where that has happened, where the seller has decided to share. The other weird part, too, to this whole thing, Roland, in BC, you have an offer date, you have to stick to it. Whereas in Ontario, we don't. We can provide an offer date and allow preemptive offers, as I mentioned. Also, the seller may choose at any time to share that information, then all of a sudden stop sharing that information. So you might come back to me with your next offer or round two, as we like to call it. And all of a sudden, I, as the seller, now this is not the listing agent's decision, this is the seller's decision, decides, well, I'm not going to share any more information now, but I want them to improve their offer once again. So there's some weird moving parts to it. And I know you're kind of thinking there, like, what is going on in Ontario? Pepper some questions away. I'm happy to answer them if I
yeah.
can.
What would be the driver to doing that for a seller? Is it to have both parties revise their
Yeah,
offer?
absolutely. And okay, so let's peel that back. Why did this come into effect? And part of that is, in my opinion, is, you know, in some cases we had properties fair market values at 1 million, and all of a sudden there's one offer at 1.2, so above and beyond, right? And from the buyer's perspective, yeah, now that becomes a little protection from that overpaying, that type of thing. So the Ontario legislation, or the powers that be, is trying to reel that in a bit. However, from the seller's perspective, you're trying to sell that home for the most value that you can possibly get, as well as I want to make sure that they can close on the property, right? There's that added piece to it. But the motivation for the seller, I can't think of a scenario where that benefits other than maybe that you have two offers that are entirely close to each other. But in general practices or general practice, you as the buying agents don't know that.
Right. That's
Yeah,
actually
I
the
mean, I
beauty.
see that clear benefit to the seller. If I had like 4 offers and several were close, um, you don't know who's going to leapfrog forward, especially if in round two you no longer share, right? And so then you're playing on the buyer, and you don't know. Sometimes I'm representing a buyer that really wants it, but it takes them a while to get warmed up. So round one they're not that aggressive. Round two they're more, and then if there's a third round, they kind of throw the kitchen pot at it, and so that would keep them in the game, at least knowing that I'm close, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what I've realized over the years now is either no regulation or all the regulation. So like all the rules that they bring into impact, initially it's a lot more work, but then in the end, people are still buying and selling, and it really is not. It's I find the transparency is nice to see. Even so much, we have a rule change where it came into effect this year that when we have multiple offers, we have to within 24 hours provide a disclosure document to all the people involved and file it at our office of the brokerages involved. Plus we have to keep all the offers now in our loop, which previously, I certainly didn't make it up, but sometimes perhaps my buyers thought another realtor might say, oh, we got 3 offers, but there was no way of proving it. Now you can't say that anymore if you ever had that bad practice, because you're going to have to designate. You don't say who it was, but you say, Remax 123, Keller Williams, Integrity, and Sotheby's, 1 were the 3 brokerages that brought us offers. And then you have to, as a listing agent, put those offers into your document stream so that it can be proven. And that is a big change, and I like that, because at least you now know, you don't know the prices that you could potentially share in your system, but at least you know that they're bona fide offers that you're competing against.
I love that. We have something similar, yet for a buyer agent to receive that information, they actually have to put a request into our governing body. And from what I understand in your situation, you submit that or those documents, and you make that available within 24 hours to
Yes.
those. I actually, as much as I hate legislation, I actually think that's a really great way to do it, because that actually expedites that information process, because that's what we want as realtors, right? And
Yeah.
that's interesting. I do have a strategy and a couple of strategies around our open offer situation. Although yet as I mentioned, I've yet to see it play out where a seller discloses any of that information. And let me rephrase, or let me just rehash this. A seller can decide what information they want to share with the buyers. It doesn't have to be all of it, and it can be a combination of everything. Here's the best offer price we've seen. Here's the best deposit. Here's our favorite closing day.
Oh,
So
Oh,
I don't
that's
have to itemize. Offer 1 look like this. Offer 2 look like this.
ah,
I can do a mix mash, a smorgasbord, if you will. I call it whatever. And that's the other weird part to it as well. Um,
well,
and
that
as
seems
a
kind of weird. That's like you're manipulating the information if it's not in a straight line, saying offers 1, 2, 3, 4, completion and conditions. Anyway,
I,
sorry.
no, we could drop it right there. You said it best. Yeah. Yeah. However, and I think as it plays out, I think that'll change where you actually have to, describe where the listing price came from, offer 1, 2, or 3, that type of thing. If I'm the buyer, do I want my offer information to be shared? Well, I kind of don't have a choice yet. Again, I've yet to see this play out, but we have lawyers and broker of records or managing brokers give us this insider advice. I can put a clause within my offer as a buying agent. Should the contents of this offer be disclosed to a third party, this offer now becomes null and void. So you're kind of playing that game a little bit, but perhaps that'll come into play. The other thing that I might do, should I know that my offer contents might be shared, buyers, realtors, we all think in round numbers, right? This offer, I'm going to put it in at $1 million or 1,000,010 or 1 million, whatever. If I want to know that I'm the leading offer or the leading price, and I know my offer information is going to be shared, as a buying agent, I'm going to submit a pretty identifiable number. So if I ever see that number, I know I'm in the lead. You've already caught on, Tisha. I like it. So I'm going to submit something weird like 1,013, 100, whatever. And I get very specific numbers. So if I see that number
42
being
cents.
exactly right, something really ridiculous, I know I'm in the lead. That's the only strategy from a buying side that I can think of where if my information's shared, that I might have a clear insight of what I'm doing. But like I said, we've yet to see this play out. I can't think of a strong case in the seller's perspective where I'd want to be sharing some of that information. But time will tell. Time will tell, my friends. Time will tell. All right. All right, let's wrap this up. So it's March 13th. Here in Ontario, we've got March break, and always after March break, we see a little influx of new inventory. People have been taking this week to get their homes ready or back from vacation. Over the next week, Calgary, do we see the influx in new listings? Is that kind of the norm there as well, or do we kind of wait to April? Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna see some more come on. I think exactly like you said, kids are, off break, and I have a few clients that get going after that period, so we're gonna see some more properties hit the listing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they'll all get bought up right away. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's happening so far.
Yeah, yeah, and in Vancouver, do not only do we see new listings, but are buyers ready to kind of hit the road and put pen to paper there, Roland, as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think there should be more after spring break, but again, with our system, you don't see as much people holding off because the dates are more regulated if you are, holding off on offers. So felt like the last week was light so far in listings. So, it always means the next or the following week will get busier. So spring break for us starts this Friday. I actually think we'll probably see more inventory hit than typical even through the spring break.
Yeah.
Spring is here.
Spring is here. I know we are on spring break right now. And for the last 3 or 4 days, I've been getting notifications of the properties we went and looked at last week that offers are coming in. And I got to tell you, it's not 1 or 2 offers. It's we're creeping up to 10 in every case. And if you are a listing agent or a seller, you want to be aware of your competition and to know what's going on and keeping an eye on their offer dates as well. Roland, remind us how to get a hold of you.
My last name is spelled Kym, Roland Kym. Google me online. You'll find my websites and YouTube, and would love to talk to you about all things Vancouver Metro real estate.
There you have it. Tisha.
Google me, Tisha McKenna, or ask Tisha at kw.com.
There you have it, my friends. And go to the website. It's on the hat. That's how you find me. And until next time, we'll see everybody next week. Bye for now.